And good morning, Patriots. Wake Up Patriots is on the air, and we're happy to have you here. I'm here right now. Tony should be here in just a moment. And that's always my favorite moment of the show. Wait a minute. I have a couple of favorite moments of the show. And we have a very special person here who many of you have missed. We're glad to have her back. Karen Turk, welcome back to Wake
Good
Up Patriots.
morning. Good morning, Patriots. I'm so glad to be here, Chris. We were just talking off air. It's really good to be back. I'm going to pop in and out when I can on Tuesdays. My travel schedule's been crazy, but nothing better than being in the Rumble chat. I am jumping in there right now, and I will be in there throughout the entire show all morning with everybody. Really good to be back.
Yeah, it's really good to have you back. A lot of things have been happening, and I know a lot of things are happening with you, with all of us behind the scenes, but even
Yeah.
on the news front. Let's start with, well, I guess I wanted to start with immigration, but you know what? There's so much going on with this whole Epstein situation. You have not long ago, John Bongino was on the air railing about how we should excuse me, we should uh, be wary of what the government tells us about the Epstein files. That there has to be something going on. It's important to get on this and be vigilant about it. Fast forward to same by the way with Cash Patel. Not necessarily always on the air, but definitely he was talking about this. He was doing this during interviews, that sort of thing. However, now it's hey, there was never a client list, or we don't have one. There's no such thing as a client list. Epstein didn't do nothing, and he didn't kill himself.
It's it's absolutely just unbelievable. Like I feel like sometimes I wake up Patriots, and I feel like I'm waking up in an alternative reality. And this is one of those times. And you know what? If I could say something positive about Elon Musk, if there's something positive to say these days, because I don't like all of the bashing of the president and everything that's going on, at least he's calling attention to this because many of us remember, and I know the Rumble chat will go crazy when Pam Bondi was saying that everything was sitting on her desk. So, here I am. I'm sitting here as, we all are in our living room in the morning, calling out like Pam Bondi, like, why did you say it was all there? What do you mean there's no list? Like, explanations needed, and we need them now. Don't you agree, Chris?
I 100% agree, Karen. And funny thing, if you're watching, remember the show Family Guy back in the day?
Of course.
Yeah, the early years. There was one episode where Stewie got himself on. What was that show? The kids say the darndest things, but not the Art Linkletter version. It's the one with Bill Cosby, and he goes, Bill, and he wants to hypnotize the world with his hypnotic glasses and try to mesmerize them into falling under his will. Well, it winds up that he tries to pull that on the show live, and Bill Cosby takes the glasses, makes fun, talks about pudding, and then just says he does the same thing and does it to Stewie with the glasses, and Stewie's like, ah, yes, Jello pudding is the greatest, and Ghost Dad was the best movie ever made. This is what Patel and Bongino were trying to do to us. They're trying to say, no, despite what we said over the last many years, there is no Epstein client list. Look the other way. None of this is happening. And again, you're
And
talking about it.
what an absolute creep, Bill Cosby ended up being. Like, think about all of the things that come to light and all of the things that change as these stories evolve. And I bet you, Chris, we're going to be having a conversation a decade from now about how all of this was covered up, just like so many other things were covered up. And go down the rabbit hole with me because we always do. Look at MK Ultra, look at all of these other things that the government said didn't exist, that weren't real, that then came to light. Like, yeah, they existed. Like, this was real. This is going to be just another one of those things. And what an absolute crazy situation when you think about it, and all of the criminal activity and just the horrors that went on. And like now, Virginia Guffrey is dead too, or Gouffre, and I apologize, I'm butchering her name, but really the person who was their lead witness is now also no longer with us. Like, I don't know, it sinks to high heaven, every single thing about it.
They're no longer with us. There was a bus accident. Days
Really?
before, yeah, there was the one witness with the bus accident right before the time, and of course, dies quickly afterwards. This is a huge problem, and what really bothers me, and I want to get to Jesus Cullen because we're going to really need it after this. But what really bothers me,
Yeah.
Karen, about the whole thing about not releasing the client list and not exposing all of this and all this. and the speculation and the idea that Jeffrey Epstein may have been an asset to pull a honeypot scheme or at least put very important people into compromising positions to throw them at their will. It means that governments, certain governments, and definitely at least now, including our own, have now officially condoned child and minor sex
Yeah.
trafficking as a means to an end. And that, my friends, bothers me the most.
It is absolutely as low as you can go. It is absolutely the work of the devil, like great lead into Jesus calling, honestly, because we all need a little more God in our life. And and again, I want to put out a serious prayer for all of the victims of this flood and just the horrors that we've all watched unfold. And I'm sure that you guys talked about it a lot. We've talked about it at home. We're all praying for everybody who is involved, and of course, for all of the people that have passed away. It's just absolutely unbelievable the world that we're living in. And you know what? Some of that, is sort of nature's wrath against, all of the evil that's going on this planet. I mean that in a way energetically, that we all have to rise up and focus more on God and focus more on the positive and focus on the things that we can control, because there's so much that we can't control. And, I think with all of that, maybe we take a little break and I get to Jesus calling this morning. What do you think,
I
Chris?
think we should because this, Karen, is purely evil. And I
It
don't care
really
if
is.
I don't care if America and Israel say they're the torches of freedom in their areas. If in fact both of these nations are involved in a scheme using Jeffrey Epstein as an asset, again, they're telling and this and any nation involved in this is telling the rest of the world that child sex trafficking is okay as long as you can use it as a means for political control. That's what they're telling you. So let's really
Well,
get to this.
it all goes back to the deep state, and I'm sure
Yeah.
we're going to talk a lot about it today. And, and I know maybe we have other people jumping on with us, and I'm sure the chat is going to be engaged, because so much of this, whether it's Epstein or anything else that's covered up about our government, is what we're all standing against. It's why we elected Donald Trump. It's why we have people like Pam Bondi in office. It's why we have the people supporting the administration, who are supposed to be working for us to uncover the things that we want to know about. And you know what? Here they're falling short. So, with that, I'm going to send out a little prayer. I'm going to read Jesus Calling, and I hope you'll all read with me if you have it. Today's Jesus Calling is: when you seek my face, put aside thoughts of everything else. I am above all as well as in all. Your communing with me transcends both time and circumstances. Be prepared to be blessedly bountiful by my presence, for I am the God of unlimited abundance. Open wide your heart and mind and receive more and more of me. When your joy in me meets my joy in you, there are fireworks of heavenly ecstasy. This is eternal life here and now, a tiny foretaste of what awaits you in the life to come. So, and that comes from John 15:11 for those of you that have your Bibles out this morning. But yeah, a little prayer is always good, coming out of what seemed like, a good weekend to remember our independence, but also a weekend that was met with so much news and so much tragedy. So, prayers for, everybody, prayers for America, prayers for the Patriots, Chris.
Agreed, and, prayers for all of us. We're entering our 250th year, by the way, as a nation, or at
It's
least
true.
as an independently declared nation. It's a big deal. I mean, it's a big deal because, while we weren't necessarily the United States didn't have the Constitution ready, it was, 1776 on July 4th that America officially declared its independence, and that's that's important coming up because uh, a lot of philosophers will tell you a society maybe lasts about 200 to 250 years, a great one, and we may be losing ours. We've been losing it for a very long time. There's a deliberate dumbing down that's been going on for the last 100 years, and it's been gradually getting worse and worse and worse. And now we're in a situation where two major cities and some minor cities in this country have elected blatant socialists as their mayors
Yeah.
who don't care about their populations as long as they get to push their national social agenda. Actually, I could count. And there's a lot of talk about Zoran Mamdani and his blatant socialism. But the city had a socialist for 4 years. What was it, 8 years too? Mayor De Blasio.
Communist. I mean, he's a
That city.
self-described communist. He's not
Right.
only just a socialist, he's a self-described communist. I mean, who is anti-Semitic, who is all of these things that you would be shocked that even the most deranged leftists would support. I mean, this is really infiltrating. Again, it's a jihad against all of us, is what it is. I'm going to call it out right here on the show because we all know what it is. We've seen it before. And his blatant, anti Semitic statements and videos and all these things that have come out. I mean, every single Democrat who has even an ounce of sense in New York has to run from this, run from it when all you have. The man has said he's a communist. What more do you need?
Oh, that's the thing. We're in New York City is filled with young people who think socialism and communism are the way to go, despite 100 plus years of failure. And we're talking about
Do they
major.
though? Do they, Chris? Do they really think that, or is that a misconception? Because I want to say that I've seen a switch in this new generation that's coming forward. People who are my son's age, who are 19, 20. So maybe the 20 somethings that are a little bit older have somehow been brainwashed. But I want to have hope. Please, God, let's have hope, right?
Well, let's see, because you think about it. You think about it, the younger generations are going to always rebel against the older generations. Heck, I'm a Gen Xer, so we rebelled against our boomers in silence as well. But that's mainly through music and absolute coolness, because that's just what we have. The millennials rebelled against Gen X because, and of course, the hatred for boomers because, well, I guess they didn't like dodgeball. That tends to be it. And their participation trophies they found out were plated with tin rather than gold. I don't know. Maybe that was the issue. Gen Z is a mixed bag at this point. Generation Alpha, we hope that things will get better, but they're likely going to rebel against Z, most of Z, and of course the millennials at this point. So yeah, you're 100% right. But the fact is, the voting age young people, you're talking about these people who are getting out of college after indoctrination, realizing that their gender studies degrees, their interpretive dance minors, their journalism degrees, and which used to be worth something a long time ago, and their what was it? Their ethnic studies degrees, professional activist degrees are getting them nowhere, and that's an issue. They're getting them nowhere. They're trying to buy houses. And they're blaming it all on capitalism because their thought leaders, they're the people they deem as geniuses because they wear glasses, I guess, thinking Rachel Maddow, whatever that guy says over there on MSNBC, is absolute the word of God. And they're thinking, well, maybe socialism is the way to go. Nobody else did it right before. They always tell you that, Carrie. You ever notice that? Well, nobody's done it right beforehand. They've all done it
I don't
right.
know. You're saying this, and like my wheels are spinning, and I'm thinking to myself because recently I've had this sort of resurgence of feeling that maybe this next generation coming out of the gate, these kids that are coming of age now that are maybe taking a turn against those of them, their peers that aren't that much older. I want to be hopeful, right? And then you say that, and I'm like, oh, I don't know. I really feel like there has to be a shift because I think everything has gone so deranged, so far left. At what point are they going to wake up? Like, we're all awake here. We're all teaching our children, our grandchildren, and I speak for most of us, that this is what you're watching, that the media is spewing is wrong. And don't let the universities castrate you and turn you into somebody that can't stand up against the basic freedoms of the United States. And I hope that we see a lot more of these young people maybe avoiding going to these universities that are going to support things like anti-Semitism. I think that maybe it's turning that way. I want to be hopeful, but maybe the chat can tell me what they think. I'm going to try to jump in there. I'm trying to follow, but it's hard. I'm a little out of practice, but I'm going to be in there. I wonder what everybody else thinks, seriously.
And Cheryl Chumley is going to be joining us very soon too, from the Washington Times, and of course our Brave and the Bold post. So it's going to be it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to talk more immigration. I know the chat has been discussing that as well because, and Karen, I want to further discuss this because I want to get back to the socialists and why young people and a lot of well, let's just say abject morons have been attracted to such things. Um, the I want this is food for thought for later.
Yeah.
President Trump has floated the idea of a pass for migrant workers. And I think that's a good idea because farmers do need their migrant workers. We don't want people to come in here illegally. Why not offer a temporary pass for those who want to work here? and maybe offer a path to citizenship for those who want to be citizens at this point, instead of just allow people to come in like the auto pen administration did. That's right. We're not calling it the Biden administration anymore. We're going to call this the auto pen administration. They just
I
allowed
think
people to come in willy nilly and just populate, occupy, if you will. Occupiers
they
do
did.
nothing. Workers do things.
Occupy. Remember, wasn't it the Occupy Democrats? Remember that whole thing? Occupy. Yeah, it's a great word that you just used. I think you're really onto something, Chris. And I think that in our chat, most of us are reasonable people. We want people who are here for the same reason, who share the values that we have, that want freedom as Americans, that want to work, that want to contribute to society, that want to raise their children with a love of God and country. And you know what? If those migrant workers have that in mind, then yeah, we have to look at it and we have to say, what rules do we need to make this or that legal? The whole root of this entire problem is we have people who are breaking the law, right? But Democrats break the law all the time, and that's accepted. So don't we need to reinstate boundaries? And I think Donald Trump has done an amazing job. I mean, just look, we have non-existent illegal immigration right now, non-existent. What was happening? How could the Democrats, the auto pen administration, allow what happened? It's really unbelievable. And it's unbelievable that coming into our 250th
Oh,
year
wow.
as a country, that we would even be faced with such a thing where our country would be hijacked, infiltrated by people like this Yahoo that's running for mayor in New York, and other people that are looking to commit jihad against, what is a free society here in this country.
Exactly, and, keep in mind, as I said before, New York has already employed or voted for a socialist
Yeah,
as its mayor twice. That was Bill de
true.
Blasio. Bill de Blasio, whose wife, or now ex-wife, was the right-hand woman for Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton has the ear of these far leftists too, and we know, he's been a grifter from the start, but he loves his power, and he loves the idea that he can influence mainly white or other non-black socialists, like a lot like Zoran Mamdani, who he's, by the way, backing to the teeth. So these should be warning signs to you. Watching these cities
Yeah.
fail, watching the leaderships fail, but people keep voting in socialists. And I guess a lot of the third worlders come in with their third world values. They don't care to be part of America. They just want other third worlders to run, despite, or he looks like me, or wow, he's not white. Let's put in a non white person, regardless of the consequences. Look, Mayor Adams has done a good job as mayor. I hate to put it this way for people.
I have to say, isn't it sad that we're sitting here celebrating Eric Adams? Like,
I'm not
I
celebrating it.
am
I don't
really
celebrate people.
perturbed by that entirely. And I'm not saying that I don't think he's the best that we have, because I actually do, which is, to me, a really sorry state of just where we are with the state of New York. I mean, pun intended, right, Chris? Like, can you believe that you're saying that? And I can't, because there have been some things recently that he's done that have been like, hey, you know what? At least he's willing to come to the middle a little bit. At least he realized how ridiculous this has all gotten. But at the same time, is it too little, too late?
Well, the way I see it with Eric Adams, and I'm not celebrating anybody. I don't celebrate human
You know
beings
what
that
I
much.
mean.
Yeah.
You know what I
Right,
mean.
right.
It's probably the
But
wrong word.
but what I am saying, Karen, is this is important. Eric Adams has a sense of duty. He's been a police officer. He's been on the beat. He knows what a mayor's policies and a nation's policies. He knows how they can affect the street level. Rich guys like Zoran Mamdani don't. They never have to experience what the consequences of their legislation, of their woke legislation. Adams had. Adams also has a sense of how to run departments and how to run a city via day-to-day operations. He's not chasing a national social agenda like a lot of these far leftists. Thing is, voters don't understand how to use their vote anymore. People running for mayor or major executive position are actually applying for a job, and people never treat them like that. They always say, "Well, I guess he likes my stance on abortion," or "Well, we should let immigrants in willy nilly. I love that. Let's vote for him." These people have no sense of how to run a city day to day. Look what happened in Los Angeles. There's a mayor who couldn't even prepare her city for major disasters. And then what happens? She skips off to Africa and doesn't even come back during the wildfires. These people don't know how
Yeah,
to run a
well,
city. They chase national
that's
social agendas.
That's it. And, and history speaks for itself. And I think you've been very kind to Eric Adams on the show this morning. I really do. And I really think that it's actually a good thing because it shows that sometimes we have to utilize the people that we have that are in a space that can draw attention to just how ridiculous things have gotten. And he has done that. And I will give him that. But I also don't forget. I don't forget when he was running around the Hamptons telling all of these Republicans that he was going to be a moderate. And he wasn't a moderate. He wasn't a moderate until things got so bad that they were burning, Israeli and American flags, on the Columbia campus, and people were being attacked, and students were holed up in their dorms, afraid to come out, just because their name, might be Cohen. I mean, I don't forget how we got where we were, but I'm thankful that we now have turned a corner with this person and that he is starting to see the light and just how ridiculous things are. And I want to go back for a minute to what you said about the farm workers because the chat went crazy. And Denise made a point that, with a lot of these farm workers and people that have come here, these migrants or these illegals who, have been here for a while, they had their opportunity. They had their opportunity to go ahead and to do this legal process, and now, has their ship sailed? And I think there are a lot of people that feel like, if you came here and you came here illegally and you didn't follow the rules, then we're already suspect about you. And we'd rather let somebody else in who can be vetted from the get go that we know is coming here for the right reasons than allow somebody who's already broken the rules to stay. So I just wanted to elaborate on that because I thought it was a really good point that Denise made in the chat.
That's fair. That's a very good point. By the
It
way,
is.
let me tell you something about these socialists. Okay, their big socialist live stream conference happened over the last weekend as well. I believe it was the third, well, last week, third through fifth. And they always provide some good material. Remember that live stream from I guess from 2019 or 2008. I forgot what year it was, where the socialists were running around screaming at each other, going point of, and the big fat trans guy was saying that that saying. Uh, Ladies and gentlemen or guys or whatever was triggering his anxiety. There's always fun coming out of that. Here's one of the neat little gems that came out of the socialist convention or the socialist live stream this year. Check this out. Socialism 2025. Some professor from Texas floats the idea of renaming the University of Houston to, get this, George Floyd University. Now that, my friends, is not only idiotic, but it's an oxymoron. I mean, think
I
about
think
this.
it goes along with, I mean, we had cocaine in the White House. Now we're celebrating somebody who is a drug addict. I mean, why not? I mean, let's just keep going with that. I mean, that seems to be the theme. The auto pen administration was run entirely by crackheads.
Right. Well, here, I have some other ideas for you as far as this is concerned. Maybe.
I mean, I don't know what else to say,
Oh no,
honestly.
no, no. I like this. I like
True
this idea.
story.
Now, think about this. We can change all sorts of names across the country on this level. So if this idiot McNally, I guess it is, some kind of what a guy who calls himself a professor with some, I don't know, beanie or whatever, he's going, yeah, we should change University of Houston to George Floyd University. Well, here's a couple of other ones. Change UCLA to Rodney King University. There we go. Change Columbia University to Al Sharpton State. Well, it's not really a state, it's an Ivy. So Al Sharpton Ivy. How about that? Or maybe we change the name of, well, why not? Change the name of some college in Westchester County to the Mario Cuomo College or whatever, because we already have a bridge named after Mario Cuomo. The, as we know,
It's
Spacine.
the
Thank you to
Tappan
Bob Grant.
Z. It's the Tappan Z. Okay. It's the
I
Tappan Z.
know,
The
I know,
Tappan
I
Z
know.
Bridge will always be the Tappan Z Bridge. I refuse to call it anything but the Tappan Z.
Oh, hold on, hold on. Now you have now you can also call since UCLA has been taken, there'll be another college, I guess, in Los Angeles. You can change that name, or at least a wing of UCLA, to the Tukey Williams College. There we go. It's another one.
It's
They just
bad.
don't
And
stop.
and if these universities weren't so worthless, I would be insulted for the universities that they should be renamed after these characters. And how many of these characters actually went to an Ivy League university, or how many of them got honorary degrees. Are we still doing that where, Oprah Winfrey or, whoever just walks in and all of a sudden they're appointed some doctorate? They still do it. It's all about the money. It'll always be about the money. And it rolls back to me. I'll go back to Eric Adams. It was all about the money for Eric Adams. And, maybe in some ways that bit him. And maybe now he's had some sort of a turnaround. I think this whole thing is going so far, I think in New York with them, even having somebody who's openly a communist who's going to run, is running on like the communist, like I am like here to basically infiltrate, and take over, the city of New York and make it some sort of Islamic hellhole. I mean, that's basically what this guy is telling everybody.
Oh, you mean London,
Hey,
right?
absolutely, I mean, this is absolutely it. And I really, with due respect, I absolutely support people and their religion and their freedom to practice their religion. And if you choose to, be of the Muslim faith, then be peaceful, be God-fearing, be somebody who's contributing to your neighbors. And you know what? That's not what we're seeing in New York, okay?
Yeah,
That's
and don't
not what we're seeing. And it's not what we're seeing from the Democrats in general. What we're seeing is that they, in themselves, have become a part of this larger problem, which is basically this infiltration of these terrorist ideals. And to think that we're sitting here again into 250 years in our country with people that are looking to change the way that America is. They did it with the auto pen administration. We're only a step away. I hope we don't lose New York entirely. I hope that New York can stay, the greatest city. I mean, this amazing place, this place that's so iconic for so many of us, the chat is probably going nuts, is gone. It's
ooh,
essentially just a memory. If
yep.
somebody like him gets in there, it's no longer a place I will travel to. I will just take it off my signature line. I mean, it's a place that I've called, a part-time home for many, many years. It won't be anymore. I can assure you of that.
So that should
And
be
I
the
hate to
campaign
sound
slogan.
like, Rosie O'Donnell or like these Democrats that are like, I'm fleeing America. But I honestly, at that point, would flee New York.
So
I really would.
Eric Adams should adopt this as his campaign slogan. Vote for me
Eric
or else
Adams
Karen's not coming back.
is the best thing. That to me is like the sickest part of all of this. That I'm sitting here thinking to myself, like, yeah, Eric Adams ain't so bad. I can't believe I'm actually saying that. To 2 years ago, I would have told you you're insane, that you were smoking crack, but then again, I wouldn't have thought that we would be at the point that we are and that I would actually be sitting here saying, yeah, Eric Adams ain't so bad. I can't believe it.
Oh, let's put it this
Stunned.
way. I only broke my leg instead of both of my legs, so it's not so bad. I think that's what we're talking about here. One more thing. We're going to
Stunned.
bring in our guest, Cheryl Chumley, right now. Here you go. Another renaming of a great university. How about, along the lines of the George Floyd University garbage, change this. Georgetown may be changing its name to Marion Barry U. There you go. Maybe you can major in speedballing or coke sniffing or something like that. Major in corruption. Cheryl Chumley, welcome to Wake Up Patriots. Hopefully Tony will be back soon, but it's me and Karen right now. Karen and me right now. I got to do that the right way.
Well, hello to you both. It's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
So what do you think? The socialist convention last week, which is always good for a few laughs. Some idiot professor named, I guess, McNally or whatever in Houston says that or during the convention says the University of Houston, let's rename it to George Floyd University.
Yeah, it's crazy how Democrats just, they crumble America's great history, one monument, one college naming at a time. And look, I remember starting out in journalism and interviewing Democrats, such as Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur from Ohio, and bringing up the S word, socialism, and asking them, how is this piece of legislation not socialist? And they would flee from that label. They would do everything they could to downplay socialism and run from it. And now it's just an open embrace. And, as you were just discussing, it's not even socialism so much anymore as communism. Democrats have been corrupted and infiltrated by the far leftist forces. And by all accounts, by all appearances, it doesn't look like they're going to give up that effort in that campaign at all.
I brought this up yesterday. I want to get to you two on this. Karen, Cheryl, what do you think of this? Immediately after more of us discuss, hey, Zoran Mamdani is a communist. The man said it himself. He's espousing communist philosophy and ideology when he's campaigning. PolitiFact, the Tampa Bay Tribune owned PolitiFact, by the way, the same company as theirs. You got that? They actually run defense for him and they're trying to tell us that no, Zoran Mamdani is not a communist. Well, they might be sheltered down wherever they are in the villages somewhere or somewhere nearby. But the fact is, he is. And the left is blatantly lying, which, by the way, proves what we've said all along, that these fact checkers, when it comes to Democrats or Trump, they're merely running defense for the Dems and trying to destroy Donald Trump at the same time. And they'll lie to do so, or at least they'll stretch the truth a little bit. Thoughts?
I think what's shocking is I don't think they're even lying anymore. I think they're outright telling us who they are. And, there's that saying, when somebody tells you who they are, believe them. And I think all of us have suffered at one point in our life or another in not believing someone when they outright say, I'm this way. And you say, no, it can't be that bad. That can't be true. And you know what? It ends up being true. And the chat basically has a lot to say. And Insider myself basically was agreeing with George, born ride 45, shout out George, that, in Europe and Asia and Canada, there's been this infiltration of Christian countries where they've taken away the freedom and the ideals of people. People outside Paris, France, they can't walk around in the suburbs that they used to inhabit. Women can't go there uncovered without a fear of being attacked. And then meanwhile, you go over to places in Israel, you go over to Tel Aviv, and you see people living by side, no matter what, embracing each other and their values. Like something's very, very wrong, but it's now happening here and it's happening in open sight. I'm sure, Cheryl, you completely agree with me. I can see you nodding your head.
I do. And, to advance that point, that the communism isn't just in the Democrat Party so much anymore and openly embraced, but the only reason they get by with that is because the media is filled with like-minded individuals. If you look at the media nowadays, it is not pro-America. It is not coming from a place of assuming American exceptionalism and assuming that America is on the side of righteousness. But it's always looking for a reason to blame America, to downgrade America, and to elevate those who want to destroy America from within. So the Democrat Party couldn't get by with this communist bent if they didn't have the media in their pockets as well and in agreement.
I 100% agree here. Let's throw a couple other things at you while we're talking about this. Elon Musk wants to start a new political party just because he's upset at Donald Trump for some reason or another. These guys again, I still consider that theater because trying to fix up Elon Musk's brand a little bit after what happened. But Elon Musk wants to start now supposedly a new party. Third parties have failed for a long time for several reasons. One of them is they just can't seem to find a straight ideology. But what are your thoughts on that? Another third-party movement. And look, we've seen the Libertarians fail. We've seen the Greenback Party fail. We've seen the Loco Focos. All right, I'm going a little down that rabbit hole there. We've seen the Independence Party kind of get somewhere for a couple years, then fall. We saw the Populist Party in the mid-19th century make a few inroads, then fail. They were a coinage of silver party after a while because no one paid attention to them. Although I will say one thing for the Populist Party, anybody who can send in a congressman named Iggy, I gotta pat your back on that one. But what are your thoughts on the idea that Elon Musk wants to put together a new party?
I mean, my dog's name is Iggy, so
Like
Iggy's right now in her crate.
Yes,
So
Ignatius
when you
Donnelly.
say Iggy, I just think of my dog. That's where I go.
Ignatius Donnelly was a populist congressman.
I hear you. I just think of my dog, who's named after a rap star, Iggy Azalea.
Yeah.
So
Well, not
that's where
Iggy
I
Pop?
go with it.
Not Iggy Pop?
No,
Oh.
not no. I just because she's so fancy. It's a song. It's a thing.
Oh, Iggy
That's all
Pop's
I
more
got
like
on that subject.
yeah, I got the Iggy Pop hair, so Cheryl.
Well, what Elon aims to accomplish with his new political party, you could say already exists with the Constitution Party. Or you can even make a case that the Libertarian Party that's in existence now could accomplish much of the same. So it just seems to me that he's, trying to stay relevant in the political realm. And what offends me, though, as a freedom-loving American, is the way that he announced the creation of this party. He took a poll and he said something, and this is paraphrasing. So Americans, said they wanted freedom. I give you freedom. I'm establishing this new party. And that's offensive to me because in America, we're based on the concept of God-given rights and liberties, right? We don't get our freedoms from Elon Musk or from any politician. So I think he's starting this off on the wrong foot already.
Well, I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. He is right about one thing. The American people are sick and tired of the Republicrats. They're sick and tired of the deep state, and they're sick and tired of politicians who say they're gonna do things and just don't because forces that be keep them from doing so. I do believe the Epstein situation may be a factor in this, but Donald Trump was elected simply because the American people were sick of the Republicans and Democrats. Donald Trump represented what a third party would have represented. If he ran as a third party candidate, he would have fared better than what was it Ross Perot? Yeah, Ross Perot
Ross Perot.
back in the 1990s in 1982. Ross Perot, you could also say could be the reason, and that's another thing. While Americans are sick and tired of the third party, a lot of people will point to the recent example of Ross Perot and say, well, because of him, we had Bill Clinton sneak in with his ultra liberal policies with what 43% of the vote, and nobody wants that to happen. So you're balanced between the idea that
I
we
was to
don't like the
blame
two
for that.
parties.
I just want to go on record, Chris. I was, young
You did it.
and impressionable, and it was my first experience voting, and I voted for Ross Perot, and he was what I saw as a departure from what I saw as an establishment and an establishment elite, which is exactly what Donald Trump represented from the very beginning for me in 2015 when he came down that escalator, and for so many of us. But at the same time, we're still in a two-party system. We can't escape that. And Ross Perot also showed a lot of us who are of the age that we are, and we're all sort of in the same boat together. This representation of, you have to work within what we're given. And what we're given is a two-party system that can't be bucked, even by somebody like Ross Perot, who made an impression on so many of us as a young age, as someone who could come in as a billionaire businessman and maybe take care of the fiscal responsibilities that we have as a country that had been so neglected by Jimmy Carter and, had this renaissance, during Reagan, and that we were losing as a country. It was just really just such an amazing time, I think, for so many of us that we knew at that time that we needed to make a change. And yet here we are, and we made a change again, still got to work in that two-party system. And we're still fighting what is seems to be just an evil agenda on the part of the deep state. And I think for so many of us, we had an expectation that, our administration, the one that we voted in, the Donald Trump administration that's going on right now, I think so many of us expected people like Bongino and Pam Bondi to provide us with the answers on things like Epstein, and they're falling short. And, you have Elon Musk, who's at least getting some press attention for some issues. I'll give him that. And American Mark made a really good point in the chat and said, Elon Musk has only been in this country for 13 years. So who is he to tear down and replace our political systems? And American Mark says he doesn't think so. So, Cheryl, I wonder what you think about the chat, and what about American Mark said.
Yeah, I don't think that Elon Musk is going to make much headway with this, and I really don't think he does have the standing or platform to criticize America, America that actually he has reaped mightily from by way of subsidies for some of his various business endeavors. And look, I just think the creation of the party will do exactly exactly what political pundits say it will do. It'll strip votes from mostly the Republican Party, probably the youth of America, in much the same way, Karen, as you described voting for Ross Perot, right? But you were energized and interested by his out of the beltway type of thinking. He was a new guy on the block, different from the parties. And I think that's what Elon Musk will bring as well. Plus, with his social media and big tech background, that's a draw for a lot of youthful voters as well. So it's going to be a disaster for mostly the Republican Party, I think. But look, founding fathers never wanted a two-party system. So there is that to consider. That being said, it is where we're at. And I don't think we're going to do away with the two-party system anytime soon.
And it was built that way, or it was built. It was sort of evolved, or I'll say devolved that way. Even when even when Abraham Lincoln was running, there were four major parties, if you will, or three major parties and one outlier, the Constitutional Union Party. And even Jonathan Bell got 39 electoral votes during that really divisive election. So yeah, you can get somebody to win with a plurality if that's the case, or deal with that, or where the electoral votes have to go. But generally, you're right. His history, I guess, from the 20th century onward, history has shown us that um, your that one party is going to get stripped of a vote when it comes to a third party coming in, and maybe somebody sneaks in. Now, what could happen in an election like that if there is a third party that's powerful enough? And by the way, Karen, I also went your route, but differently. In 1992, I voted for Andre Marou, who was a Libertarian Party candidate. Finished fourth.
Oh,
Yeah, finished fourth. The Libertarians are making that headway too. What was it? Ed Clark in 1980 finished third ahead of John Anderson in a couple states, at least one, maybe two. And Ron Paul made headway in 1988. That was my first election, and I guess you know where I went there. But the idea is, you look at today, the Republicans are the ones that are generally angry and unhappy with the government, the New World Order, and everything else. They're not. They distrust their own party. A third party person comes in, that vote's going to be split, and the Democrats will bring in their socialist candidate. And by the way, Cheryl, I believe it was you who said a long time ago they'd be taking advantage because socialists don't sleep.
This, this is true.
I
And
had to
really,
stick that in there.
I thought of that book, the idea of that book, back when George Bush was president, and he was putting into play his American Dream Down Payment Act to encourage minorities to take tax dollars to purchase homes. And I thought at the time, how is that not socialist? And I didn't write the book back then. It was just a few years ago I wrote this book, but it's based on the idea that if we do so much in America nowadays that is really socialist or socialism, but we just don't call it that. And now we've moved to the point where Democrats are calling it that. And so wait a couple years and they will be openly embracing communism, just as they have come to openly embrace socialism. So it's something, if we don't call it out early by action, instead of just listening to the narrative, then we're just headed down a path of danger of losing freedoms.
And I agree with you
yeah.
there.
It's insane. I mean, our chat is just absolutely going crazy over the fact that like this is really like even where we are. And when you bring up, your book and this rise to sort of acceptance of communism, it's what my parents escaped when they escaped the Nazis in Austria. My father was born in 1928, and that was the same time that the Democratic Socialists came in and basically took over the country, which allowed Hitler's rise to power and the infiltration of, so many places in Europe, but specifically Austria. And you see what's happened in Europe. That's what the chat keeps bringing up. We're seeing it with our own eyes. And it's hard to believe that there are people in this country who are accepting of the socialist agenda. And it makes so many of us wonder how much of it is theatrical, talking about this feud between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Is that theatrics? Is that because we want to divide the Democrat vote? That's one of the comments that was made. Or, you could take it to this. Is it all staged? Are these protests really made to look a lot bigger than they are? Is it really only a very small segment of American society that supports this? Is it the media, the leftist media, the bought and sold leftist media that's blowing this up, Cheryl?
Those are all really good questions. And I would say to a certain degree that it is theatrics, right? And that the media certainly does push that narrative and give it the appearance of being larger than it perhaps really is. But you can't forget that the public school system has been brainwashing our youth in America for years and years now. And it's these same youth who have graduated from their socialist loving teachers in high school to socialist loving professors in college. And now they've become the new leaders of America. They're the ones in the street that are throwing Molotov cocktails at police vehicles and setting fires to buildings and private businesses and calling that a First Amendment free speech right. So there has been a turning in this nation, and it's not just a few select factions of society. It's also an entitlement mindset that has really corrupted much of the Democrat Party, for instance, which is why you see such an open embrace of socialism and communism that actually sells and works its way into the voting base. So these people are open now in our political system.
Well, that's another issue. A lot of leftists, a lot of liberals, a lot of socialist, communist types are going to tell you, "Well, Social Security, unemployment, that's all socialism." Yin, 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 yin." The fact is, it's not. A true capitalist society, a good capitalist society would understand that there is going to be a situation where elderly people are going to be retiring. They're going to have to leave the workforce to pass the baton to younger workers and younger managers. And there will be situations where businesses go under, they have to make cuts, and there's going to be unemployment. There needs to be a solid safety net in a good capitalist society. That, my friends, is not socialism. That is a good idea. Socialism is when the government controls, as Zoran put it, the means of production, and you're told what to do, you're told when to do it, and basically what if you don't feel like working, that's fine. You'll still get some kind of UBI, universal basic income, on the backs of those who are willing to work. And those of you who have more skills or talent and everything else, you're not worth anything. So whatever you go goes to those people who just aren't working. And that, my friends, is socialism and communism, not Social Security. That's not communism. That's us paying into something that will help pass the baton to younger workers in the future and take care of older people who have already invested.
Which is why we need to revamp the system, Chris. It's like the whole time you're saying that, I'm just thinking to myself, like, of all the things that, we've now elected our administration, the Trump administration to do. And a lot of that has to do with revamping what's already there. I mean, if it means Doge coming in and looking at Social Security and looking what's being inappropriately managed, looking at different things. And, let's face it, we have socialist programs in this country. Some of what we have is very socialist in nature, and all of that needs to be looked at. And we need to look at what we're spending. I think for so much of this, it comes back to fiscal responsibility for so many of us. But I want to also give a really big shout out to Insider myself, who's in the chat, who keeps going back to the feud between Elon and Trump, saying that, he feels like it's staged, and Trump spent a lot of time with, Elon's son, and all of these things that we all watch play out in the media. And I want to say that, it's nice to be optimistic coming into the show after being off for a while. And the chat always makes me think. They ask a lot of probing questions, which is why it's great to have you here, Cheryl, too, with the books that you've written and these talks about, where we're heading with this socialism and this agenda. What about all of these programs? What about Doge? What happens with this feud? Because a lot of us would like to see the feud over, because we felt like we were making headway, like finally some fiscal responsibility. Finally, Doge is going to tear it apart. What's going to happen with all of that?
Well, hopefully Congress will pick up where, the formal Doge efforts ended, and they'll actually make some cuts that are substantial in the coming years. Because look, the truth is, no matter who's in political power, if we don't deal with our national debt, our deficits, and the burden that we're putting on our next generation, right, we're basically enslaving the next generation to whatever foreign entity holds our debt. And we're making it impossible for the future generations to grow in prosperity. I mean, we're great now under Donald Trump, under this White House. But in the coming years, this national debt is going to cripple us. And we just have to start looking to history and see how other nations have just completely crumbled, in large part because of their moral compass. They lost their moral compass, and secondly, they lost their financial footing by taking on too much debt. And the political will needs to be in Congress to deal with debt. So Doge put us, on that path. It seems to have just sort of dried up and disappeared. And I don't know. I don't know what the future brings, but Congress needs to take care of our national debt before something happens that we can't recover from.
Right now, there's a lot of criticism about the big beautiful bill. I really hate calling it that, so I'm just going to call it the spending bill. I don't like the marketing names, like the what was it? The Inflation Enhancement Act from the Auto Pen administration. By the way, Cheryl, we don't call it the Biden administration anymore. It's called the Auto Pen administration. So that's it. We got to make that a thing, okay?
It's the Weekend at Bernie's administration.
Eh,
That's right.
By the way, before I even move forward with this, Cheryl is the host of the Bold and Brave podcast, Bold and Blunt podcast. I keep calling it Brave. It's Bold and Blunt podcast, and it's an amazing podcast. Tony's been on a bunch of times. My cool friend AJ, who you've seen here, has been on. You have all these great guests, and Cheryl, you're a wonderful interviewer, and by the way, interviewee. So
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I think I lost my train of thought a little bit on this, but I guess where I'm going here is part of the situation. I want to get to immigration here because is what the Patriots were talking about earlier on the chat. I did promise we get into this, and part of that big bill, part of the spending bill, was adding more money to fund ICE. Keeping in mind my criticism, I agree with some of these, with Massey and some others, by saying I don't like the idea of increasing the debt. On the other hand, perhaps with all the money we're spending on illegal immigrants in this country already, and all the services and everything else, the extra employees, all the fat being trimmed, might take a year. But let's say the immigration enforcement happens, that the expenses are likely to lessen in the next 3 to 5 years, therefore shrinking the debt, which would be a great thing. But you're seeing people like, we talk about Mandami, but people in power already, like Karen Bass, who are trying as best as they can to keep destroying the country and telling federal ICE agents to get out of her city. We want to keep these illegals here. Doesn't matter because they're amongst the riffraff, as she would put it, because that's what I believe these politicians think. And it doesn't matter. We just want to keep the population up for the 2030 census. So watch her in action, trying to virtue signal about ICE agents or kicking ICE agents out of Los Angeles.
I am going to say.
Hey, guys, I need to get my phone. We're departing.
Okay.
Who wears the suit better, Karen Bass or Hillary Clinton?
Karen Bass.
Any comment, Mayor Bass?
Thank you.
Mayor Bass, any comment?
Yes, my comment is they need to leave, and they need to leave right now. They need to leave because this is unacceptable.
Who did you speak with?
Just wait and see.
Mayor Bass,
They will be leaving.
All right. Who's the perv that was doing this camera anyway? I mean, you got to think about this. You know how there are sick people like that do these porn videos or whatever. They try to get these hot blondes off the line, and they close up on their boobs. Who's the disgusting perv who's trying to host close up on Karen Bass's boobs for this camera?
Yeah, I don't think that's going to be much of a moneymaker, to be
Oh
honest.
my God. You've got to be a real sick perv. And I watched Armageddon yesterday with the Steve Buscemi character. Oh no, it wasn't Steve Buscemi character. Was the sicko? Anyway, or was that Con Air? Anyway.
Mayor, who did you speak with on the phone just now? Who did you speak with on the phone? Wow.
Head of Customs. You know what?
Yeah,
bet they
I don't
won't.
think that was intentional. I mean, I have no words. I have no words, Chris.
but that was my observation.
Your take, yeah, okay.
The question
All
of
right.
the thing that what I wanted to bring up to both of you is these socialists in power. They're angry socialists. They know what's at stake. They know the 2030 census is at stake, but they're going to stop at nothing to keep these illegals in their cities, no matter how expensive or how destructive they've been.
They're all bought and sold. They have no real opinions. Unfortunately, these people are products of the deep state that supports them, and they are the puppets of that. It comes down to, again, Cheryl, I'm sure, I can't wait to read your book. I'm sure you touch on a lot of this. I mean, who are the puppeteers? That's what I always ask myself, whether it's the Auto Pen administration or somebody like Bass, who are the people behind the scenes?
Yeah, well, you find a lot of China influences, right? It seems to me that if you look back over the last few years, that Democrats have thrown in completely with the globalists, and which is run by China as well, right? But a lot of Republicans, it seems, have turned a corner on thinking that America's best days are behind her, and so looking forward to their own self-interest, they seem to think that it's better politically for them to straddle lines to, on one hand, yes, America is great, American exceptionalism still exists, and they support America, but on the other hand, they want to dip their other foot into China waters and sort of double deal, right? Because they're looking at a future where they think that China is going to be the dominant player on the world stage, and they want to be part of that successful wagon. So it just seems like both Democrats and Republicans have thrown in with the globalist mindset, with a globalist look at world politics, which really puts China and the communists in charge.
And basically, that's what the regular Democrat electorate are trying to do as well. Even, and I'm sure it's unknowingly, because if you think about it, I was posed a question. Was it yesterday or the day? Was it, maybe it was yesterday on this program? Maybe it was Vinny. I don't remember. They I was asked, why do Jewish people continue to vote for Democrats in New York City, and why do they support Zoran Mamdani? And this is because of marketing. Years upon years, generations of voting for the one side, because the Democrats were always portrayed themselves as the sensitive side. We're for the workers. They've devolved into a party for the non-workers, but people don't know that. A lot of people, their rank and file don't know that. Their thought leaders are people who talk on The View or MSNBC that tell you, no, we're for the workers. The Republicans want to destroy the middle class, when clearly it's their own policies that are. But people don't look, they don't do their own research. They figure, well, Franklin Delano Roosevelt did some cool stuff, got us out of the Depression, which, by the way, is a lie, too.
Oh.
Getting in the war did, but we can argue about that for 3 hours. The idea is they still believe that the Democrats are the party of altruism, and this is displayed. This is also displayed by the news media. They tell you what they seem to, when they report. They seem to take what a Democrat politician says as the word of God, and there's no need or no necessity to investigate. Whereas Trump says something, well, we got to break this apart. Maybe is or was has a different definition, or maybe or when he misspoke, he said something bad. Orange man, see, he's destroying the country.
I don't know. I want to speak for my elders, being a Jewish girl from New Jersey, and the people that I've seen that have made major mistakes in who they've supported and who they've elected into office. Because really, I hope that, again, with some optimism moving forward of where are we headed as a country, that a lot of the people that you're talking about, Chris, a lot of these older, Jewish people in these blue pockets throughout the US, which are mostly in New York and Florida, they're aging out now. God bless all of them. They are so misdirected. They are so misinformed. They are so, in many senses, delusional in who they've put into office. But again, a lot of those people consider themselves to be refugees when they came here, because they escaped the Nazis and they escaped communism and they escaped socialism over in Europe. And they thought it will never happen here. And a lot of that older generation sort of never woke up to the fact that it was happening right underneath their noses, and that their children, their grandchildren were then being indoctrinated by this socialist agenda that has permeated many of our universities here. And all you can do is hope that it's taking a turn as some of these people age out, because I can tell you, as someone who, takes my religion and my spirituality pretty seriously as far as my belief in God, I think a lot of Jewish people will tell you that their belief in God definitely supersedes any belief in any kind of agenda that is taking place in this country, and that God is the source of the American dream. In God we trust. And there are many Jewish folks who realize that. And I see a lot of us, a lot of the people in America making a shift towards conservative values. And those are Jewish people included. So let's hope that older generation, those people you're talking about, and I see them every day out at Publix, Chris, I see them every day, and they're angry and they're misdirected. And I think that they're quite frankly sad that they've been able to be misled for so long. Let's hope they're waking up, Cheryl.
Well, I think that they are awakening big time if you look over the last year at college campuses, right? And the
Uh,
protests and just the open, vicious anti Semitism that's been displayed on college campuses and wasn't really tempered down at all until this new administration, until President Donald Trump's administration was sworn in. And, it's been a terrible wake up call, I would have to say, for the Jewish people because culturally speaking, historically speaking, Israel was founded on socialist principles. So I'm sure that they were taken quite aback when they see their best friends in the world, Americans, turn on them so viciously, as seen on college campuses, and really as seen in some of these protests. You always see these protests nowadays. They always have some sort of Palestinian pro-Hamas flag waving in the background, which is odd, but I think the awakening is happening among the Jewish community, the Jewish voters in America.
Well, they also have now. Now
Please
the new thing
God.
is the Iranian flag, so that's in there as well. Cheryl, we're hitting overtime.
Yeah.
So Cheryl, where
Mhm.
can our viewers, listeners, if you will, find your podcast?
Oh, well, thank you very much for that. Of course, at Washington Times, but wherever podcasts are available, you can just do a search on it and pick it up there. I appreciate that.
It's called Bold and Blunt, which is pretty much what we all are here. We're bold and blunt. Actually, I'm getting to be bald and blunt, but that's another story for another day.
Sad.
I know. I reek of sadness.
Hey, Cheryl, I'll be listening. I'm going to tune into the podcast. I know a lot of us in the chat will be.
Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it. Thank
Well,
you.
what do you have coming up on the podcast, if you don't mind my asking?
Well, I have Tim Head today. He is the president and CEO of Unify. He used to be with the Faith and Freedom Coalition. He's dissecting the big, beautiful bill. I know you don't like calling it that, but that's the title that stuck. And he's explaining how it impacts laymen's.
And keep in mind, Tim Head is in no way related to Murray Head, who is the singer, as you know, the actor who sang "One Night in Bangkok."
Oh,
Big
that's
hit
a
in
good
the
song.
1980s. Yes, from the play Chess. So anyway, all right. I want to thank you all for being here. Patriots, thank you for being here. Thanks for being with us. Karen, great to see you again. Cheryl, thank
Nice
you.
to
And we're going
see
to get you
you.
when Tony's back again. Tony will be back tomorrow. We have scheduled to talk to us tomorrow is Dean Cain. We'll talk more about that. Well, tomorrow.
Thanks, Chris.